Welcome, beautiful thinkers. So this is a little story about how I went down to Chiapas in Mexico to renew my tourist card, and how I discovered an important lesson, a sublime lesson about the inherent goodness of people. Let's talk about that.
Thought.
Last week, I took a trip down to Chiapas, down to Tapachula. So living here in Mexico, still on a tourist card, trying to get my documents together to get a temporary residency. So I decided to head down to renew my tourist card, cross over into Guatemala. So I had an interesting journey. Well, I remember before I arrived, I was on the plane and I started to pray that everything was going to go all right. And actually I thought, well, what if I don't just say everything is going to be all right? Because, that's the rule. Stretch the imagination. Ask for something a little better. That's the rule. Don't put limits on what you ask for. So why not ask for not just that the trip is successful? That would be wonderful. But also that it's going to be sublime, that somehow having this journey is going to introduce some lesson into my life, or that I'm going to see a different aspect of reality that is empowering for me, that feels good, that brings me elation. Now, what about that? What if I ask for that? That's what I asked for. So I was imagining getting back home, sitting on my bed and lying on my bed, and kissing the tourist card that I'd renewed to make sure I could stay here in Mexico legally. Some of you know I was once deported from Mexico for overstaying a tourist card, so I don't want to do that. And just having that feeling of elation and enjoying it and thinking, what an amazing time. And also remembering in this vision, or in this daydream that I'm having, I am remembering the time when I was imagining this daydream. So this is a technique that's mentioned by Noah Lampert on the Synchronicity podcast. He talks about that a lot, and it seems to serve as a kind of bridge between the vision that you're having of the future and the present. Somehow that seems to tie everything all together. So there on the plane, what happened? Actually, I forgot about this until I reviewed my photos yesterday. Looking out the window, close to arriving in Chiapas, I'm not sure which mountains they were. Well, I was flying out of Mexico City. I look out the window, and there are these mountains, and they have this mist around them. Some of them are snow-capped mountains. And I remember, actually, this is a scene that has great personal significance to me, because this is actually the vision that I had of Latin America before I ever arrived. This is what I suspected or thought or knew somehow that Latin America was going to look like. And so when people used to say to me things like, mention words like Teotihuacan or Machu Picchu, I would stare off into the distance and imagine these mountains with this mist swirling around them. And that's exactly what I saw that day on the plane. And I thought, surely, if there's a good omen, this must be a good omen. So I arrived in Tapachula, and I knew, okay, I have to get to the border. Took a colectivo, or like a little van with a bunch of people in it, like a small bus, basically, and head towards the border, head towards Talismán. And I brought my umbrella all the way to Tapachula. But when I got there, I forgot to bring it with me. I didn't think it was going to rain for some reason. Of course, it's this rich tropical rain, the kind of rain that makes Chiapas look beautiful and green from the air. And I got to Talismán, and it's just raining and raining. I tried to take shelter in this little, well, it's like just a shelter, like a roof with corrugated iron on it. I don't know what the people are doing there, but they seem to be waiting out the rain as I am doing. And I start talking to this fellow. He's this union representative. It's kind of funny because he starts telling me how serious it is. It's kind of strange. He tells me, so you want to cross over to Guatemala and renew your tourist card? And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. He's like, well, listen, you got a problem because, they're going to charge you a lot. The Mexican officials are going to ask you for a huge bribe. They're going to ask you for $250. So you can do that. And I was like, okay, I don't really want to pay that. I don't have that kind of cash on me anyway. And he's like, well, that's how it is around here, man, And in a not so nice way, he was saying that in Chiapas, many people are corrupt. And I said, okay, well, thanks for your advice. And then I was a little panicked. I'm thinking, what's going to happen? These officials at the border are going to try to rip me off. Nobody's my friend here. What's going to happen? And I get into the office on the Mexican side and hand over my passport and the tourist card. And it's like, listen, your tourist card expired a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, yeah, they canceled my flight to Guatemala. He's like, wow, this is a problem. And I'm like, He's like, we're going to have to do a lot more paperwork because of this. I'm like, geez. Okay. And I'm thinking, is this guy trying to rip me off or something? What's happening? I asked for my passport back, and he's like, oh, okay, yeah, sure. But are you going to come back tomorrow or what? I'm like, well, how long will the process take? He's like, it's just an hour. I'm like, oh, okay. All right, well, let's do that then. And I'm sitting there waiting for an hour, and the fellow Jose comes out after about 30 minutes and keeps me in the loop, which is something, a lot of people in customer service in Mexico wouldn't even do. But this bureaucrat was actually, or this official, was a little more thorough than most people. And he says to me, listen, I gave your passport to my boss. It's it's coming along. I'm just going to go get lunch. I'm like, cool. Well, thanks for keeping me in the loop, Jose. And then get it done, get it processed. And I'm like, well, listen, what I really want to do is just head over to Guatemala and come straight back into Mexico. Can I do that? They're like, yeah, you can do that. Anyway, I'm on the Guatemalan side, and this is not a nice vision of Guatemala. I'm sure there are great places in Guatemala. People talk about Antigua and other nice places there. But this is like a little shanty town because it's like all these stores cramped into the 200 meters between the bridge and the customs office where people are getting their vehicles checked. And I go to the immigration office and I'm wondering, is this even legal? Is this even real? Because it has cling wrap all over it to supposedly protect from COVID. It's like limiting the amount of space that you can hand things through the window. So it's just a 2-inch gap so I can hand my passport through so I can't spit on the guy, I guess. And anyway, all of these, there's about 5 Guatemalan fellows following me and being very insistent and saying, hey, what can I help you with? What do you need? And some of them maybe, possibly they were offering to smuggle me into Mexico illegally and get me false documents. Not going to go into details about that, but I was quite stressed about the whole thing. But what happened? In the end, I got my entry and exit stamp to Guatemala, headed back to Mexico, and everything was fine. And in fact, I even had a chat with Jose afterwards, And it's like, you live in Guadalajara. My colleague here, she's from Guadalajara. And he's like, you have to go sometime to Mazatlan. And I start singing, Mazatlan, ay mi Mazatlan, that song. I guess a lot of places in Mexico have their own song. Anyway, I just chilled there and shot the breeze with Jose for a while. And I just realized, like, wow, I was so worried about this whole thing. So suspicious, so paranoid, thinking that things were going to turn out so badly. But as it happened, people were good. As they say here in Latin America, Somos más los buenos. There are more of us good folks. So that was my trip to Guatemala, I guess, not so much my trip to Chiapas. But that was the message that I got from it. And yes, I got home to Guadalajara. I sat on my bed and I kissed that tourist card to represent my stay here in Mexico, free from persecution and free to pursue a visa. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
A beautiful thought.
Thank you for listening. Remember, you can subscribe on Spotify and other podcasting apps. Apple Podcasts, use Podcast Addict. That's a good one. And we're putting out a lot of content here. And every time you listen, that's a little blessing. It lets me know that wonderful things are happening in the world, that people like to receive this message of happiness, sublimation, and enjoyment, and peace, and contentment, and fulfillment. So, yeah, please, if you keep listening and share this with your friends, that would be much appreciated. And most importantly, have a great day.